because the car was tooken,
There's no such word. Listen to me. There's no such word as tooken.
All right.
I've talked to people who have taken like chartered flights.
All the consequences should have went.
So the fact that he hasn't came out to talk about.
As the Attorney General of the great state of New York, I and my other colleagues, all Democratic Attorney Generals.
Last night, the government of North Korea proclaimed to the world that it had conducted a nuclear test.
She looks literally the exact same.
Despite spending an exuberant amount of money on the event.
Download for free at Grammarly.com.
Now, don't get me wrong. Some of my best friends are Americans, but even Americans have to admit that when it comes to accuracy, when it comes to rules of grammar, when it comes to specificity in communication with the English language, that it doesn't seem to be a high priority from the upper echelons of government, the top, from the president and politicians, pundits, priests, down to the peasants. People seem not to take the English language seriously. And I wondered why. So I asked a friend of mine who's a bit more enlightened in terms of his own failings when it comes to grammar. And here's how that conversation went. I have not done this before. I've never had this conversation with an American before. I've had the conversation with Jamaicans. I've had it with people in my family because it's the sort of thing we talk about. So I'm going to apologize in advance because since it's something that's a pet peeve of mine, since it's something that I've thought about a lot and talked a lot, it's possible I may say something that's offensive to Americans or to other people. So since you're my friend, I don't want to offend you, and I don't want to call you out, and I don't want to embarrass you, and I don't want you to make me feel bad. So forgive me in advance, but I do have some questions. So let me preface it first, just in case we decide to publish this. One of my major pet peeves, the thing that actually, so to me, it feels like fingernails on a chalkboard when I hear it, is people mangling the English language. When I hear newscasters, when I hear presidents of the United States saying we're going to drop nuclear bombs, it just grates me because, you know, how do you get to be president of the United States and not know how to pronounce the word nuclear, you know? So it's something that bothers me. I read it in the comment section, and I've always wanted to do some sort of series that points these out to people who don't know, because I think one of the greatest travesties is the fact that you have people who have millions and millions of followers who are repeating these mistakes, and there's a younger generation coming up who don't know any better, so they're following their Mr. Beast's lead, for example, and you have people who are learning English as a second language, and they don't know any better, so they're constantly repeating the same mistake. So I think it's an important thing. A lot of people disagree. A lot of people don't take language that seriously. A lot of people, in fact, let me just also say that I make mistakes as well, like most humans. In fact, just now I said a lot of, and a friend of mine pointed out to me that a lot is also poor grammar. I should say many people, you know, not a lot as in, you know, a parking lot or a car lot. So I understand that people make mistakes, but to me, some of the mistakes are simple mistakes that broadcasters, that newscasters, that politicians, that PhDs should not be making, and they're setting a bad example. So I have a series that I've been compiling, and every time I hear or read some of these mistakes, I make a note of it. So I have close to 100 different examples of things that people have said in public, and I think that they should do better. So, but I want to get into the mind of someone who makes those mistakes and find out, I guess, why the mistakes are made. Why don't they know the correct pronunciation or the correct grammatical structure, to really get an understanding of how best to approach putting out a series to really help people, because the goal is not just to lambaste people. The goal is not just to call people out and embarrass them. The goal is to impart the information in such a way that people actually learn from it and do better and speak better, more clearly. So I want to ask you some questions that are going to seem basic. Some of them may be embarrassing, but I'd like to find out, essentially, why don't you know the correct grammatical structure? Okay, so you mentioned, and the reason I'm talking to you is because you mentioned that you are aware that your grammar is not up to where you'd like it to be. So I guess the first question is, and you can, when you start answering this, you can also give me your introduction as to, how you found yourself at this place. But the question is, how do you know that your grammar is not up to par? What are the clues that you get that it's not? Are you using Grammarly? Are you comparing it to other people? How did you get to that place? And then I guess we can move on from there.
Yes. So for me, I became aware because I always knew that I had bad grammar. And this stems from the fact that during school years, depending on your background and depending on where you grew up, depending on your environment, speaking too cleanly can get you bullied really bad. And not just from your classmates, but even your teachers can show a kind of resentment, some kind of unfriendly nature. So in my experience, as well as perhaps many other English learners, there's a kind of discouragement from even having the mindset of wanting to learn to speak correctly in the first place, right?
Okay.
For example, I'll give one example. In the United States, or in North America in general, in the UK is probably the best example. Depending on where you grow up, there are certain patterns that we say that are not correct. And we know it's not correct, but because our parents say it, our doctors say it, the teacher, maybe he or she says it, when you watch TV, when you read messages, it's a common thing to say. And subconsciously, it's not correct, because when you sit in class, this is the correct way and that's the wrong way. But it's just a natural habit of how we were raised to speak. Yes, English is our native language, but we were never taught to use the proper way because it's just more comfortable, it's more casual in our environment. And how one of the indicators of how I understood that the way I speak or the way I write is incorrect is simply when I come across people from other parts of the country that said this phrase differently. And I would say, why do you say it like that? And then they say, oh, we always say it like this where I'm from. Or I would say, why do you say it like that? And then that person says, well, it's supposed to be like this. And then they would show me in a book, or they would show me somewhere the proper way how it's said. And I said, oh, wow, really? I didn't know that. So because of this, there's a lot of, not mixed, I don't know. There's a lot of confusion, mixed information to what is really the correct way or what is not correct. And it's hard to determine, because just like you said, our presidents are saying it, politicians are saying it, news people are saying it. So we automatically trust them. Oh, okay, this is the correct way to say it. And we don't question it. We don't think about it. We don't research because it's just assumed that that person is correct. Plus, depending on your environment where you grew up, being too smart, because in America, whether fellow Americans want to hear it or not, it's a very anti-intellectual society that discourages people from wanting to, study or speak formally or correctly, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what I feel why I can't, me as a person, say something correctly, or why my grammar is much poorer than it should be.
All right. Can you give me an example? Like you mentioned that you would run into people who say things a certain way, and then you ask them why they say it that way, and they'll say that's how we say it where I come from. Can you think of an example, a specific example? I like to do that just to give people an idea of what we're talking about. Take your time if you don't remember while I look for something. Well, give me an example of some situation where you encountered that.
Growing up, one small example, we always said John and me, or me and John, blah, 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 when it should be John and I.
Right.
And
if it's subjective.
Yeah, the objective, it should be in subjective, but because everybody says so-and-so and me, or me and so-and-so, it just becomes a natural habit, and we don't think about why this is wrong, and it should be John and I.
I get that. In fact, when I first came to the United States, I felt the pressure to dumb myself down. I felt it because like you said, it wasn't cool. It's not cool to be smart. I remember when I first came to the United States, and I was in elementary school, and the teacher would ask a question. In Jamaica, when the teacher asks a question, you raise your hand, and when you're called on, you stand up and you give your answer, and you sit down. And of course, the kids in the States laughed at me when I did that.
Yeah.
And I always raise my hand for every question, because I always knew the answer. And I obviously stopped doing that because that was just not the way it's done in the States. But I did feel the pressure that if I wanted to fit in, that I would have to talk a certain way, act a certain way that made me look and feel dumber than I was. So yeah, I'm aware of that. Fortunately, however, at least I guess I had formed enough of my personality by then that I didn't care, and fitting in was never something that I aspired to. I actually want to be different. I wanted to be the standout, and I guess in my family and growing up in Jamaica, a value was placed on education such that it was more important for me to be seen as smart than it was to be accepted by the Americans, who I didn't feel a part of anyway. So, that to me, that was not the pressure. So I could, but no, I do understand that. Absolutely. I'm aware of that. I have other friends and relatives who succumbed to that pressure. They wanted to fit in, and they ended up, as you said, disregarding their higher standards and just melding in. But for me, that wasn't pressure. Okay, cool. So when you read, I also think that, the fact that I read a lot of books gave me an understanding of what was correct, because the books I was reading at that time and in school, I could see where the quotation marks were in relation to the period. I could see the past participle. I should have gone to the supermarket. One of the pet peeves I have is that people in America don't seem to know the past participle, where it's, go, went, gone. I go to the supermarket. We went to the supermarket. He should have gone to the supermarket. We would have gone to the supermarket. In America, people say he should have went. He should have went to the supermarket, which drives me crazy.
Yes.
And
yes.
I hear politicians saying it. I just saw a news report where newscasters are saying that thing, and it drives me crazy. It's just like it was not ever taught. It was just not ever taught. In certain instances, people get it, but I even had to stop watching certain of my favorite YouTube podcasters because I hear this and I feel like I'm getting dumber listening to these people because it's being normalized, you know? So that's another pet peeve of mine, the lack of past participle in America. But okay, so
Oh, wait. Before you ask your next question, I remember. Even simple, I'm sure you hear this a lot in New York because you were in New York. Even basic grammar structure, they'll say I is or
ooh,
he gone, that kind of
right,
thing.
right.
And
I see.
remember when I went to school, I can't remember we ever studied grammar per se. English class was
Hmm.
mostly just it was just literature. We just
Okay,
read books like classic English. Well, when I say English books, I mean from the UK, like Shakespeare or something like
right.
this. We wrote a lot, but I can't remember we studied grammar so much.
Or phonics, or right. Okay.
Yeah, and I remember when I went to school, I was placed in special education because I think people assumed that I was having, and I stuttered a lot, but people
Okay.
assumed that I had special needs, but I didn't have special needs. It's just the curriculum was pretty poor. And in some parts of New York City, the schools are not well funded. I don't know if you have seen some of the classrooms or how some students behave. They're very disruptive in class. They fight with the
Right.
teachers, they get physical with the teachers.
Absolutely.
So
Hmm.
even if you, the individual student wants to study, is interested in not just English in any class,
Hmm.
you have some group of boys throwing stuff. They're
Right.
loud. The girls are fighting with other girls, and there's just so
Hmm.
much disruption. There's no way it's impossible. So your
I saw that.
education,
Mhm. Go ahead. Go
Mhm.
ahead.
So your education, even if you yourself have motivation and drive to study and follow directions, listen to the teacher, do your homework. The other
Hmm.
students, because they don't have such drive, want to make sure that you don't get an education just because why should you get an education when we don't care about education? Why are you better than
Right.
us? So we have to distract you because I remember I was reading a book. I was trying to read a book and this boy was like, "Oh, why you think you're better than us?" And he just
Hmm.
starts distracting me, grabbing my book, pushing me, talking to me. It was just no way. It was just impossible.
Right.
And basic grammar like I is, and blah 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 blah. Things like this was a strong factor why grammar suffered.
Right. I understand. And in fact, I was part of that situation as well. So for people who are experiencing that, I'm going to share my story just so I can give hope to someone who might be going through that situation. So I came from Jamaica, started going to school at a Catholic school in the United States, in Queens. And many people, I'm correcting myself now, many people think that Catholic schools are better behaved and you get a better education at a Catholic school. And I guess for the most part, you do. However, what people fail to realize is that at Catholic schools, you often find some of the worst behaved students because that's where parents send their students to get some discipline if they if they're always misbehaving. So we had a classroom full of people who were talking back, who were fighting, like you said, who were throwing things at the
Mhm.
teacher. There was a fight every single day in the
Yes.
class. So much so that
Yes.
even at that age, before 12, I would chronicle all the people who were fighting. Emma would fight with Fred, and Fred would fight with Mark. And
Mhm.
because to me, it was
Mhm.
fascinating being new to this country, seeing kids that out of control fighting. I started to document it. Anyway, um, yes, so it does become difficult. Fortunately, I had one other friend, a guy named Tony Smith, Anthony Smith, if I remember. This was, I think, fifth or sixth grade, and we formed a little coalition, and we did the extra credit assignments. So I had a partner um, uh, in school, so we were able to bounce off each other and actually take the classes seriously, do the extra credits. So I wasn't alone in that regard. But yes, I totally understand that if you want to fit in, if you don't want to get beat up every day, that there is some pressure to conform. Absolutely. Yeah. So, but if you're in that situation, I would suggest to students, and of course, haven't been a student in a long time, and I don't firsthand know what the schools are like these days, especially in the States. But I would encourage people to uh, see if you can find someone of like mind. And sometimes it's not easy because everyone else wants to conform. But if you can find someone who you think might share the same values, then align with them, and at least you can have a partner, to fight off the bullies in the bathroom. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And this is going to sound very counterintuitive for a lot of children and teenagers, and it might kill their social life.
Mm-hmm.
Be a teacher's pet. Hang out with the English teacher or the teacher who will protect you, because
Right,
believe it or
right.
not, that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very, very big stuttering problem. I couldn't stop stuttering. It was just involuntary until after school, after high school, when I
Okay.
started at college. But it was my sixth grade teacher
Mm-hmm.
who was Cantonese from southern China.
Okay.
And she was an English teacher and history teacher, but more English teacher. And
Could you say her name, please? Tell me her name if
well,
you
she
remember.
told us, yeah, I remember her name. She told us that to call her Miss NG. I don't
Okay.
know if it's Nang,
Okay.
but she
And
said maybe because nobody could pronounce her name. I don't know, but she said NG, like the letter N and letter G.
okay. Cool.
And she was very, very protective of me because I had the same problem with when I attended sixth grade. In the US, we say sixth grade. In the world, they say sixth class. She protected me from any problem. So, for example, when
Mhm.
I think at first I was struggling, but she
Mhm.
saw my effort and she gave me special attention and she helped me with like some grammar, some writing, so it was improving. But then there were some students, my classmates, who were trying to start bullying me again. She kicked them right out, completely kicked them out.
Okay.
And she told me
Cool.
if I have any problems, go right to her and she'll take care of it. A couple of kids were starting to bully me. I told her about it. She took care of them. And I would stay after school with her to study with her, and it started, it helped me out a lot, I should say.
Excellent. Excellent. Good. 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 So you didn't succumb thanks to her help.
Yeah.
Hopefully, some of your classmates are watching now and or and know of her and can let her inform her about this video. So okay. So the challenge now is I could do a series and I would have infinite content. I could do a series on all the mistakes that people are making from the politicians. In fact, I started one or two videos on the Walt Goodridge channel, and but there's so much content, and I'm not sure if it would really make a dent to point out what people are actually saying wrong. So, for example, the first video I did in the series was George Bush 2 saying nuclear. And then the question was, how can you get to be president of the United States and not know how to pronounce the word nuclear? Some people say that he did know better and he was just trying to be more relatable to the average person. Personally, I don't buy that. But then the other one is the Attorney General of New York, Tish James. So Tish James is the Attorney General of New York, and she there's a quote of her saying,
as the Attorney General of the great state of New York, I and my other colleagues, all Democratic Attorney Generals, have endorsed Kamala Harris for President of these United States.
So the plural of Attorney General is Attorneys General. All right? Just like the plural of mother-in-law is mothers-in-law. You put the pluralization on the main word, Attorneys General. So the question that baffles me is, how do you get to be the Attorney General of the state of New York and not know how to pluralize your own profession? that to me is wild. So that was the second. So anyway, I could do a whole series on mistakes that people are making, from politicians to newscasters, but I want to do something where I can actually help people understand and correct the behavior. So I guess my question might be, have you noticed any improvement in your grammar? And if so, how was that affected? Was that someone who you respect, you listen to? Was it books that you've read? Was it, I want to find out the best way. Was it being shamed? I have one strategy where I actually think maybe I just better shame people into acting, like calling out the major podcasters and the major YouTube content creators in a major way, which might be difficult because I have only a small channel, and embarrassing them so that they can do better. But of course, I don't think they will, because they've already proven. One of the challenges, I think, is they have proven that you don't need to speak proper English in order to be, quote, successful, unquote. So there's no real incentive for them to improve their grammar from a success point of view. So anyway, if you've noticed any improvements, give me an example, and what was it that made the difference in you recognizing behavior that you were guilty of and then changing it for the better?
I have two examples. If we are talking about writing, like writing in English, this one is strictly from reading, because I read quite a lot. Books, articles, for example, if I'm reading about history, if I'm reading history books. For example, my friend from Malaysia, he always sends me excerpts from history books about history of Malaysia. And English is kind of like the lingua franca, and it was one of the most highly respected languages during colonial times. And when I read their text, it's so clean. It's very, eloquent. And I say, oh, and when I read the paragraphs, I look and I say, wow, that's how you write this? Oh, wow, I didn't know this. I didn't know this. So I'm always talking with him, and I ask him, because he's also an English teacher, and I ask him questions like, oh, why do you say it like this? Or why did he say it like this? And we exchange notes. So it's like kind of English language buddy, because that's his
Okay.
profession, that's his passion, and that's all I do
Okay.
now.
Cool.
So
Excellent.
we exchange notes, and he teaches me some stuff, and I give him some kind of tips on how I write. And this is one of the biggest things that helped me out a lot. It's like having a peer, we called it peer review, but it's like a peer system where you have a group of people who share the same goal of improving your grammar. And we just critique each other. Like, we should say it like this is correct. And I say, why is this correct? And then he tells me, he shows me, then I research myself and I say, oh, you're right. It's like this. That's one way. Second way is, one second. Second way is, I also listen a lot to audiobooks. Podcasts, but the podcasts I listen to are, again, they're historical, about history, culture, but these authors, or how you call them, they are well-read, well-known speakers. So I just listen to them while I'm, usually I like to turn off the light, I turn everything off and just play audio of someone speaking, just to have a sensory deprivation, just so I can focus on the materials. Just listen. And then after a while, I recognize the pattern. And then I try to speak like this when I'm speaking to someone, and then maybe I'll research why it's said this way, and then this is how I improve my speaking.
Excellent. So those are very good ways. And I would encourage anyone who's watching this to follow suit as well. But I will say this though, and this is not to take anything away from what you've just said. The challenge, and you made a point of specifying that the people you're listening to are not your random podcasters. It has to be someone who actually knows English. And unfortunately, there are very few people who can communicate and not fall into some of the traps that the typical American, let's say, makes when they speak. Again, even people with PhDs are saying should have went. Even so it's really difficult. So reading the classic books, that's a good way, because generally classic books, the really classic, not the modern books, but the classic books will be edited by teams of people, so you can be sure that the period will go inside the quotation marks. It always goes inside the quotation marks. So at the end of a sentence, if you're putting a word in quotation marks and it's ending a sentence, the period always goes inside the quotation marks. And everyone who's writing comments on the internet seems not to know that, so they put it outside of the quotation mark. But yes, so those are two good ways. So having a peer group of people who can actually correct you, and actually listening to and reading books that are professionally edited by people who know the English language, which is getting harder and harder to find. So, but okay, cool. All right, so that's good. So one of the things that I decided to do was to put out a series, and rather than, our video is going to end in a few minutes, by the way. When it does, in 4 minutes, I'll continue. All right. So I have, let's say, close to 80 right now, different topics. I'll just go through a few of them now, just so people can see what's coming. But I'm thinking of starting a series, and it just came to me yesterday. And the series was going to be called Make Grammar Great Again. So being a little bit of a conservative myself, I don't mind the association with with Trump, but I'm going to call it "Make Grammar Great Again." And then I had another idea called "In Search of Intelligent Life" in the YouTube comments, where I go through YouTube comments, and one of the challenges. I'm going to make two challenges to anyone watching this video. The first one is, I'd like you to listen to anyone speaking on the internet today and find me a person who can do an entire 10-minute or more video on YouTube without using the word literally. If you can do that, I will be very grateful. It seems that's why my major pet peeve is that people are using the word literally all the time, even to start sentences. I mean, I did a video on this before, so I won't go into it too much, but almost every single instance of the use of the word literally that you're hearing is completely wrong. It's the opposite of figuratively, it's the opposite of metaphorically, so people are using it just to emphasize something, whereas in many cases it's not needed at all. In many cases they actually mean actually. He literally came and sat next to me. It's just, anyway, I won't get into that now. But some of the others are people misusing advice. This is a written one, advice versus advise. People are saying, please give me some advice, but they're spelling it advise, as in the verb advise. They're using apostrophes to pluralize words, which does happen in some instances, but every time people are saying, my friends, they're putting apostrophe S when they just need to add an S to make it plural. So I've seen that a lot. People are just using apostrophes willy-nilly to make a word plural. People don't know the difference between when to use a book or an elephant. They say this is an example. This is an example of. It's just. I'm wondering why is that not known? Why do people not know that there should be an end there?
I have a video. I have some extremely bad news for you. Gen Z, I don't follow the terms they use, these generation wars, but younger people, school people, and it's the worst I've ever seen.
All right.
Let me ask you one question before we're about to get kicked off. Have you ever had teachers in when your classmates were very disruptive and the teacher always said, I got my education, I got my education. He or she always said that. Now, when I seen some YouTube videos about the state of the English language with the younger people, my first reaction, I got my education.
Right. That's I understand that. I understand. We have less than a minute left. So let me hold that thought. I'm going to restart the stream, and then you can log back in, and I'll tell you my thoughts on the I got my education retort. Okay.